Hello everyone, welcome to the lecture series of Theory of Computation. In this video, we'll start with a new topic about finite automata. So let's begin. So to understand finite automata, let's recall the introduction of TOC, in which we have seen that TOC is nothing but the study of how problems are solved by machines. How problems are solved by machines. Right? So let's take a basic example. Let's understand finite automata in terms of the C programming language. Right? So let's say if I have to write any C program, then let's enumerate our alphabet set. Right? So what are the possible symbols that are present if I am writing any C program? Right? I can have all my lowercase letters, let's say A, B up to Z. I can have uppercase letters, let's say A, B up to Z. I can have digits also, 0, 1 up to 9. I can have some operators also like plus, star, divide, colon, semicolon, and what all operators that we have. Then I can have some directives like hash and all the basic symbols. So this is basically my set or my alphabet set for writing any C program, right? So this is basically a finite set. Right? Now, if I'm writing any C program, let's say I write any C program as void main int a b like this, right? Now, in terms of C, this is a program, but in TOC, can we say that this is nothing but a string? Right? These are basically strings only. Void, main, these brackets, all these symbols that we have used over here are nothing but from my alphabet only. Right? So, in terms of TOC, this program is nothing but a string. So now the question is that whenever we write any program, so let's forget about C language, whenever we write any program in any particular language, be it in C++, be it in Java, be it in Python, so how will we decide that whether that program that we are writing is valid or not? Right? Whether this program is valid or invalid. How will we check that? Right? So, can we say that C programming language is nothing but the set of all valid programs? Right? C programming language is nothing but a set of valid programs. Right? And there can be some invalid programs as well, which will obviously not be able to compile when we present it to the compiler. So the important question is, what are valid programs, and given any program, how will we decide that whether that program is valid or not? Right? So, in order to understand the valid programs, what we can say, if I ask that how many programs are possible in a C language, how many programs can we write in a C language? Obviously, the answer will be infinite. There can be infinite number of programs that we can write. Let's say P1, P2, so on up to some Pn. Now, given any program Pn, how can we decide whether this Pn program is valid or not? Whether it's valid or it's invalid? The naive answer for this is, we can store all the set of valid programs in our memory. But is it a feasible approach? Not at all. Why? Because storing the set of all the valid programs that we can write in a C language is nothing but wastage of memory, it's wastage of time, it's wastage of effort. Right? So, given any language L and a string S, now whether this particular string is present in my language or not, how will we check that? Right? So let's say if my language is finite, if this language is finite, what we can do is, we can store all the set of valid strings. Since the language is finite, that means the set that is containing that language is also finite. right? So we can store all the possible strings in our memory, and simply we can check whenever any string is presented that whether that string is valid or not. So let's take an example to understand this. Suppose let's take an alphabet as AB. If I have to write language of all strings that are of length 2 over this alphabet, so what all strings I have? I can have AA, I can have AB, I can have BA, I can have BB. All these strings are of length 2. Now let's say I present a string AAA to this language L, right? Now, is this string valid if I present it to this language? No. Why? Because we can simply check all these strings are stored in my memory whenever any new string is presented, and we have to check that whether that string is part of the language or not. We can simply check with all the words that are present, and if that word is not present, we say that this particular string is not part of the language, or otherwise we say it is part of the language. So in this case, this is not part of the language. But if I presented this word like AA, right? Now this word is present in my language, we say that it is a valid string. But for finite number of strings, this is a valid approach. But if my language is infinite, for an infinite language, is it feasible to store all the possible strings that are possible over my language in our memory? No. So how will, in that case, how will the machine decide that whenever any string is presented, that string is valid or not? Let's say if my language is set of all strings that start with A. Obviously, the number of strings are infinite. There can be infinite number of strings. So in this case, it is not feasible to store all these strings in our memory. So in this case, we have to give a machine a method, or our compiler a method to decide that whenever any string is presented to it, then it can simply tell us whether the string is part of my language or not, right? So what we are talking about, given any language, if this language is presented to some model, right? Let's call this M1 model. We draw a M1 model for this language L, right? Once this model is drawn, we present a string S to this model, right? Now this model can reply me in terms of two answers, yes or no. If it replies me with a yes, we say that the string S belongs to language L. But if it replies with a no, we say that string S does not belong to L, right? So this M1 model is nothing but a finite automata. So finite automata is one such mathematical model that can help you decide that whether any particular string belongs to a language or not. So let's understand this more. Suppose I am given with a language L, which is set of all strings that start with A. So what all strings I can have? AA, AA, AAA, AB, so on. So right now I'm drawing a finite automata for this language. Let's first understand how will it identify that whether any string belongs to it or not, and then we will understand how this finite automata is drawn. Okay, so right now just understand how will we decide that whether any string belongs to it without going into the detail that how this is drawn. We'll come to that in the subsequent part. So to draw finite automata for this language L, let's say this is my start state. We call it A. Whenever it receives a single A, it moves or it make a transition to state B. This state B is my final state. For any A number of A's B, it remains here only. And if it receives a B, it goes to some another state C, and it remains here for any number of A and B. Let's understand this finite automata first. This is state A. AB, B, C, AB. So in this finite automata, we basically have three things. The first thing is the alphabet. The alphabet is the symbols for which we draw our finite automata. The first is the alphabet. The second is the states. What are these states? These circles. These circles in which we have written capital A, capital B, capital C. These circles are representing my states. So I have basically three states in this finite automata, A, B and C. And all these arrows on which we have written small a, small b, these are representing my transitions. Right? Apart from this arrow. So whenever an arrow comes to any state and it is not coming from any particular state, we call it as an initial state. So this is nothing but this A is my initial state. Initial state is my starting position. That we have to start from this state. So whenever we see any arrow which is not coming from anywhere, we call such state as our initial state. And whenever we see any state that has a double circle, that represents a final state. So all the double circled states, they represent the final state, and all those states in which an arrow is coming but not from any state, that represents my initial state. So this is the basic structure of finite automata. Now let's take a string and identify that how will this finite automata decide that whether this string is part of the language or not. For example, if I take the string as, let's say, A, B. Now we have to check whether this string belongs to my language or not. What is my language? We have drawn this finite automata for which language? Set of all strings that start with A. So we have to check whether this string is part of the language or not. So let's see the working of this finite automata. A, B. First, my starting position is state A. So this is my starting position A. Now, let's look at the string. What it says? When we have to check on which state are we and on which state are we and which symbol are we receiving. So I am on state A and I am receiving symbol A. Then what move I have to take? I am on state A, I receive a symbol A, I go to state B. So on seeing this small a, I make a move to state B. Right? Then I am on state B. Which is the next symbol I receive? I receive A. So on state B, on receiving A, I remain on B only. Right? I remain on B only. Then I am on state B. I receive symbol B now and I remain on B only. Right? So let's do this again. Initially I was on state A. We have received small a. On state A, receiving small a, we make a move to state B. We have reached state B. On state B, on receiving symbol A now, we remain on B only. We remain on B only. Then on state B, on receiving symbol small b, we remain on B only. So, if after the completion of the scanning of the entire string that you are presented with, if you end up in the final state, we say that this string belongs to the language. Right? So what does the finite automata says? That whenever you are scanning any string and after completion of the scanning of the string, if you end up in the final state, we say that that string belongs to my language. Right? So we say this string belongs to the language N. So yes, AAB is part of the language. So we can simply check by looking at the string. Since we know that AA is starting from a small a, so yes, it will belong to the language. But in order for a machine to decide, it needs a mechanism. It had run this string on this particular automata and it ends up in the final state. We say it is accepted. Let's take another example. If I take the string as, let's say, let's take another string as B, B, A. Okay, now let's run for this string. So initially I'm on state A. On state A, on receiving symbol B, we end up in the state C. So on receiving symbol B, we reach state C. I am on state C. The next symbol that I received is B. Then we remain in C only. We remain in C only. I am on state C. On receiving symbol A, we remain on C only. We remain in C only. We have completed the scanning of the entire string and we end up in C state. So is state C final? No, it is not final. So we say that it is rejected. So this particular string does not belong to the language N. Right? So in this way, finite automata decides that whether any string belongs to the language or not. So finite automata is a collection of basically three things. First is a finite set of states. One state will be, of course, the start state, or you can call the initial state that we have just seen. And there can be more than one final state. One final state is mandatory. Apart from this, more than one final states we can also have. More than one final state. The second thing is the alphabet symbol for which we are drawing a finite automata. That is my alphabet set. So alphabet is nothing but the possible input letters. And the third mandatory thing in a finite automata is the set of transitions. A finite set of transitions that tell us that for each state and for each letter of the alphabet, which state to go next, So that is my transition. So transition basically tells you that if you are on state A and if you receive symbol A, you are going to state B. If you are on state B, you receive A or B, you remain in B only. If you are on state C, you receive A or B, you remain in state C only. If you are on A and you receive symbol B, then you go to state C. So these are my transitions, at what move I have to take if I am on any particular state and I am receiving any particular symbol of the input alphabet. Now let's practice this, that how to draw the finite automata. So till now we have understood what is a finite automata and how will we check that whether any string belongs to it or not. Now let's understand how to draw a finite automata for a language. Let's say, for example, I am given with a language or a regular expression, let's say. So now we are aware with regular expressions, right? So what language does this regular expression tells us? So it tells us that there will be a B. There will be a mandatory B in the language, and there can be anything before it, there can be anything after it, but a single B is mandatory for any string to be part of the language. So if I have to draw a finite automata for this regular expression, so we know, let's say I'm starting from this as my initial state. This is my initial state. So initial state can be represented in two ways, right? One way is that we presented with an incoming arrow which is not coming from anywhere. So this tells us that this state is my initial state. This is my X state. So let's try to number the states with the capital letters only, right? Let's call it A. So this is one way to represent initial state, or we can also represent it like this. with a minus symbol in the superscript, we say that it is a initial state. So in any of the ways we can represent our initial state. So let's take the first approach only. So this is my initial state, right? Now we know that whenever, if I take lambda from this and if I take lambda from this, the only letter that will be formed from this regular expression is B, right? So we know that single B is part of the language. So if I am on state A, I receive a single B, I can simply make a move to my another state B and I can call this state B as my final state, right? So this represents that whenever single B is presented, it will be accepted by the language. Once you reach the final state, that means once you have come across single B, right? Then if you receive anything after it, since it's A plus B whole star, that means once you have encountered single B, then even if you receive any number of A's or any number of B's, you can remain in the final state only, right? So irrespective of how many number of A's I receive or how many number of B's I receive, I remain in the final state only, right? So this we can do. So what does this automata tells us? That if I am on state A, I receive a single B, I make a move to my final state B. After reaching final state B, any number of A's or B's can come and I remain in the final state only, right? Now, what happens? Now my alphabet set is A, B. Now another mandatory thing that we need to note over here is, whatever finite automata that we are drawing now, all those are deterministic finite automata. What do we mean by deterministic finite automata is that how many states that are present in your finite automata, then you have to show a transition for every letter of the input alphabet. What does this mean? I have state A and state B. Then state A should show a transition for symbol A also and symbol B also. Right now it is only showing a transition for B only, right? If you are on state B, then it is showing a transition for both A and B. Right? So for state B, it's complete. But for state A, we are still left to encounter that what we have to do, what move I have to take if I receive a small a, right? Let's say if I receive a string as AB, or I receive a string as double AB or triple AB, right? So should this string, or are these strings, all three of them part of the language? Yes, they are, because a single B is encountered. So yes, they are part of the language. If I have to form this AB word from this regular expression, how will I form? I can take single A from this, B is here, and I can take lambda from this. I have to form double A, B from here, then how can I do? I can take double A from here, single B, then lambda, triple A from here, single B, lambda. So all these three strings are part of the language. So this tells us that no matter how many number of A's you receive, you remain in A only. The moment you encounter a B, you go to the final state B, right? And then how many number of A's or B's you receive, you remain in B only. So let's do a transition for any string. Let's take this string A, B. Let's check whether this string belongs to the language or not. How will the automata will process that? Initially I am on state A. On state A, on receiving symbol A, I remain in A only. On state A, on receiving symbol A, I remain in A only. On state A, on receiving symbol A, I remain in A only. On state A, on receiving symbol B, I make a move to B. B is my final state. So after completing the scanning of the entire string, I end up in B, which is my final state. So the string is accepted. Right? So this is how we can draw a finite automata. So there is another way to draw a finite automata for this language. So just like we have seen for regular expressions, that there is no, for any particular language can be represented by a number of different regular expressions. Same goes for the finite automata as well. that for a same language, a number of finite automata can represent your language. So that was one way of drawing that finite automata. Another way is, let's say this is my initial state. Language is A plus B star, A plus B star. One thing is clear, that I receive B, I make a move to my final state. Now final states, there are two ways to represent that as well. Either we can represent it by a double circle, or we can place a plus sign like this. So this is also representing a final state. So either use that approach, or you can use this approach as well. On receiving B, we move to final state. On receiving A and B, we remain here only. Let's say on receiving A, I make a move to another state, let's call it C. Then, no matter how many number of A's I receive, I remain in C only. Then, on receiving a B, I make a move to my final state. Right? Now, let's process the previous string through this automata, whether we are able to process this or not. I am on state A. On A, on receiving symbol A, I make a move to C. On C, on receiving A, I make a move to C only. On C, on receiving A, I make a move to C only. On C, on receiving B, I make a move to B. On completion the scanning, we end up in B. B is a final state, so this string is accepted. Right? So this is also telling us the same thing, that if you are on initial state, on encountering a B, you can move to the final state. But if you receive any number of A's, you remain in any of the other state apart from the final state, and after encountering a B only, you will make a proceed, you will proceed to the final state. So this is another way to draw this finite automata. There is another way to draw this finite automata as well. Let's say if I'm on my initial state, on receiving a single B, I make a move to state C, which is my final state. On receiving any number of A and B, I remain here only. On receiving A, I make a move to some state B. Right? Then, in the previous example, what we have done, we have created a self loop on this state, and we have created a loop, and we have to create a transition of B state, of symbol B from C to B. Right? So this much part remains same, that on receiving symbol B, you make a move to state C. This automata, what we can do, if I receive any number of A's from here now, then I can take a transition back to my initial state. Right? So let's check for string this only now again. I am on state A, I receive symbol A, I go to state B. I am on B, I receive symbol A, I go to state A. I am on A, I receive symbol A, I go to B. I am on B, I receive symbol B, I go to C. So my string is accepted. So the same language can be represented by a number of different finite automata, right? Now let's see another thing, which is the state transition table. Now whenever we draw a finite automata, we can represent it with the help of a state transition table also, that tells you that on which symbol, which transition you are taking, right? How to draw that? Let's draw the initial automata that we have drawn. Initial state. I am on A, on receiving any number of A's, I remain here. On receiving B, we make the transition to C, which is my final state. I remain on C for any number of A and B, and for symbol B, I go to C only. The first column of the state transition table will be of states. The second column will be of the number of input alphabets. So I have two symbols in my alphabet, which are A and B. So one column will be for A, the other will be for B. So here we will mention these states. First, starting from the initial state, which is A. If you are on state A, you receive A. You go to which state? You go to B. If you are on state A, you receive symbol B. You go to C. which is my final state. Then we write down for state B. If you are on state B, you receive A, you go to B. If you are on state B, you receive B, small b, you go to C. Then for C, if you are on state C, you receive A, you go to C only. If you are on state C, you receive B, you remain on state C also. Are there any more states? No. So this is my state transition table for this particular automata. So this was an introduction of finite automata and the state transition table. In the upcoming video, we'll take more examples at how to draw the finite automata. If you like this video, then do like and share my video and subscribe my channel. Thank you.